Hello and welcome to the Derby Way podcast with myself, Luke, and Jack. How you doing, Jack? You all right?
I'm doing good, thanks, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, it's good to be back. It's been a hectic few months back in football with everything sort of finding a new normal. We're back and we thought we'd do a review rather than actual podcasts after the games because there'd be 3 games in a week or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And it was going to get a bit hectic if we try and put together a podcast for that. So, here we are with the season review. So, first of all, first point is that the season's over. They finished in 10th in the Derby. Is that a good first season from Cocu and Co? Jack, do you think so? Or?
I'd say it's a decent season. I mean, before the season, me personally, I was expecting sort of a high mid-table finish with obviously the introduction of a lot of youngsters, and that's exactly what we've got. We've had lots of youngsters coming into the team, and a lot of them getting a lot of minutes and improving as the season's gone on, and that's only going to help for next season as well.
Yeah, definitely. Did you, and especially given everything that sort of happened throughout the season, I think everyone will know roughly what we're alluding to. Not just the one incident, but there's been several incidents going on. Do you think that's made the job even better from Cocu so far, or do you think this is sort of expected given the playing squad?
Well, I think it's made it more difficult for him because obviously there's been a lot to deal with. Like some managers might have dealt with it another way and possibly would have been the wrong way. And I think he's clearly dealt with it relatively well, managed to keep the squad quite together and still focused on playing football and trying to win as many games as possible.
Yeah, and what did you think about the style as the season went on? Because it looked a bit rough to start off with, but it looks as though it's sort of found some sort of shape as it's gone on.
Yeah, I mean it's quite enjoyable to watch at times. Obviously, you know a bit more about sort of tactics and shape and everything like that. So it'd be more interesting probably to hear what you've got to say about it.
Um, well, it's just been interesting to see how it's developed because I remember at the start of the season watching some of the games and every single time they pass it out of the back, it'd look really uncomfortable. And
Mm.
you'd sort of sit there and go, oh, I'm not really happy with how the other team pressing and how they're passing out from the back. But I think it was probably the Birmingham game where we saw it the most, where there was no pressure either, but passing out of the back quite nicely. A few times in that first half, Bruce would get the ball and someone would be pressing. We'd just play this really comfortable pass down the middle to one of the centre halves. And I sort of thought, well, at the start of the season, everyone, even especially if fans were in there, would sort of be sitting there going, "Oh, what's happening here?" and be a bit cagey. But now it looks like it's taking some real shape. But the
Mm.
only real problem is probably the mistakes.
Yeah, I think the mistakes are something which, if they can be taken out, then Derby would have. I'm pretty sure I saw something the other day saying Derby would have been on about 78 points if you'd removed sort of some of the mistakes that have led to opposition goals. So obviously, if you can take away maybe 50% of those mistakes, maybe a little bit more, then Derby could probably put like a much better challenge together next season.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about the mistakes is that we've been in this position before. We've sort of sat there
Mm.
and gone, well, McLaren's side are really good, but you take away some of them mistakes and they'd be even better. Some of the seasons, the season under Clement, you'd probably sat there and go, well, a few mistakes here and there. And it's always been there, but especially towards the end of the season when you've got the 5 of the top 6, I think those
Mm.
mistakes were a lot more, well, sides would be able to counter on them a lot more, especially the good
Mm.
sides. So it doesn't look good when you see it, but I suppose it's almost part of the plan of trying to get them to play this certain way. There's going to be mistakes, but you carry on.
Yeah, exactly. I think so as well. I was wondering what you sort of think about Cocu's sort of style of play in comparison to Lampard's last season. Is it something you prefer, or did you prefer how Lampard played?
Um, I don't, I, the problem I had with Lampard's style is it didn't seem like there was any identity there. It was a rough
Mm.
outline for, relatively good passing possession football. But I never sort of sat there and went, this is trademark Lampard. Not that anybody would have known what that was,
Yeah.
but it didn't look any different from a rough outline for, decent enough football. But under Cocu, I see a lot more identity, and there seems to be a pathway not only for the club but for the youngsters coming through as well of a way to play. And it's probably just putting all the pieces together and getting the final third working a little bit better because I think there were issues with that, or at least getting from the middle third to the final third. But I don't think one's more enjoyable than the other because they both have their flaws. But there seems to be more of a building block and more identity with Cocu, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think the only thing I would say that I liked a bit more of Lampard's was probably the pressing, the high pressing, winning the ball back in the opposition half quite a lot, and that's quite entertaining to watch, I think, and quite a good way to play.
Yeah, I think I saw this graph of how of the places on the pitch, or like the zones in which teams in the championship press, and there was like nothing from under Cocu.
Yeah,
And that's probably the only thing I want to see a little bit more of is not only just a press but a team press, because I do see little bits of Sibley going and pressing someone or Waghorn on their
yeah,
own. There's not any real team press, and when I watched, especially when they played Leeds, everyone seemed to know their role and everyone seemed to know how to press, and
yeah.
we probably don't see any of that. And if it's just wanting to be, a little bit more secure and not leaving holes, then that's fair enough. But given how they want to play and they want to draw teams out, sometimes a press is normally the best thing for a side.
Yeah. I think though with the current playing squad, it'd be quite difficult to play that sort of game. Obviously, there's not really bags of pace anywhere. Obviously, you got Martin up top. He's not going to be going and chasing down defenders, or you don't really have any sort of dynamic wingers or anything really with a lot of pace. So it probably makes it a little bit more difficult to play that kind of game, even if Cocu would have liked to.
I suppose so. There is bags of energy in there if you chuck in a Shinnie, Sibley, Whittaker. There's energy there, but it's where you use that energy, and I don't think there's quite enough. I don't know what it is, or don't know what the word I'm after is really. It's organisation, perhaps, of knowing where to press and how to. But it's an interesting one, and that's the only thing I'd really like to really see them improve on next season, if that is something that Cocu wants to do against certain sides.
Yeah, same. I think with had someone like Marriott been fit for more of the season, and if Cocu would have actually started him had he been at full fitness, he would probably been a better option in terms of that pressing game, because obviously he's got quite a lot of pace. He'll, especially when he comes on as well, he'll just go and sprint at defenders and stuff. And for much of the season, Derby haven't really had too many players who would do that, especially from the striker.
Yeah, I think that's been a real criticism of the playing squad in general, is that there's no real pace there. There is acceleration. I've seen a lot of where Sibley gets the ball and he'll beat a man quite easily. The same with Knight. There's energy and acceleration, but there's not necessarily pace or pure pace. So that is probably something that's missing, and that might be something he addresses in the transfer market. Or perhaps Marriott is that link, because I think with Martin, especially, we saw over those 3 games in which Waghorn was banned, and I know he still started Martin for some of the games.
Yeah.
We still lacked a dynamic sort of edge to it, because he is. It's hard to say. He is a one-trick pony per se, but he's very good at what he does. But it's difficult when things or games don't suit him.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's well, again, that's something else that needs to be addressed. I think Cocu has said that he was looking to sign a striker this summer anyway, but I think Derby probably do need a few more options, or maybe one extra option, and probably one striker that's going to be sort of the main man next season. Because I think there's players that can fulfill different roles, but there's not a player that can sort of do everything. And I think that's probably what's going to be needed, perhaps.
Yeah, I agree. I think we addressed this in a previous podcast, and we said, well, actually, we think we don't have a Cocu striker, someone that is him. He's got horses for courses strikers. If you need someone to run off the back, you've got Marriott. If you've got someone who needs to hold it up, you've got Martin. And then you've got Waghorn, who can do a bit of both, essentially, but also can play on the right. There's not a striker that really fits the mould of a Cocu striker yet there, and that might be something he really does address.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, because as well, we probably are in need of a striker that's going to score a few more goals, because this season you've obviously got, I think Martin scored 11, Waghorn 12 maybe.
I think they're both 12, yeah.
Yeah, there's not really that sort of player that's going to score 25 a season right now. When you look at the sides of the top, you've got Fulham with Mitrovic, Brentford with Ollie Watkins, and then obviously I think with West Brom and Leeds, it's more sort of spread about the team. But it's it'd be pretty good to have a striker that's is gonna score you a lot of goals.
Yeah, I mean, something we spoke about, me and my dad the other day actually, was how would you feel about Martin going? But also, is there a replacement in? It's going to sound mad, but is there a replacement in Rooney who's got the touch, who's
Yeah.
perhaps has got a bit of physicality, and he could fill that Martin role? Do you think that's a possibility, or?
Yeah, I mean, quite possibly, but I think, um, I mean, we've seen Rooney play really well in midfield this season, so I don't know if Cocu would want to change his position after how well he's done, because he's sort of the player that's been sort of linking the defence to the attack with a lot of his passes, and maybe that'd be something that would be missed if he was to be moved up front. But obviously, you'd like to think someone else will be coming in to play up front, because obviously you say like Martin potentially could be leaving. So then should Martin leave, there wouldn't be like an out and out striker that's going to be able to fulfill his role.
Yeah, no, I get that. It was just a random discussion that we had because we said, well, actually, he's probably on very good money, and even if it's taken down a little bit and there's more incentive space, it's still decent money that you could spend elsewhere. And Rooney probably he doesn't have to start there all the time. It's just is that a possible
another option? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Bielik's going to be coming back next season as well. He might be playing in midfield. He could possibly play beside Bird in the midfield too. So that could be another way of fitting Rooney in the team, perhaps.
Either that, or I could see Bird's. It depends where the progression is, but you could almost see Bird being that one defensive midfielder. But has he got enough? Can he dictate that area well enough yet? Is the question. And he has been playing well, but it's a lot to go from two men, doing that job in the defensive midfield. It's a different job to be able to run that on your own and have your other midfield players higher up the pitch.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, mate.
Speaking of Bird and some of the other youngsters as well, obviously there was talk of the season possibly being curtailed with 9 left. How important has it been for these youngsters that the season's carried on? They've managed to actually make some appearances before the end of the season.
Well, I think it's been absolutely massive. I think with, in particular, Louis Sibley. I mean, I think he'd only played probably about 2 or 3 times before the
one, wasn't it?
season was ended. Yeah, I think the game against Man United, the game against Blackburn, wasn't it? So
yeah,
2 games there, and then obviously he's come back and he got that hat trick against Millwall, scored 2 more goals. I think he got 2 more assists. So yeah, he's gone from probably had the season ended, he would have just been thought of as just a standard young player, but now he's sort of come back and that sort of propelled him into being a key player for Derby and should hopefully continue to be next season as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a really important part, I think, for Sibley and some of the other youngsters as well. But I think it's probably been most important for him because he's gone from someone who started a game and the goal against Blackburn was very good, but it could have been seen as a flash in the pan sort of thing. It could have well been, he's shown his quality, but can he do it consistently? And even in games where he's had to deal with being man-marked, there's still a different game situation for him to adjust to, and also something different for him as a player. And we have seen some of his performances be really good, some of them on the other side, but it's about getting that consistency and getting it from moving between one side and the other back into the middle and going, right, we want to see this sort of consistency. And that'll only happen if he gets games.
Yeah, exactly. I think as well, we've seen Knight do quite well. I think obviously he's had sort of I think the goal when against Cardiff, when he played that back pass, misplaced the back pass, that was sort of a big learning curve for him. And I think young players do have to go through things like that and have to make mistakes to develop further. And I think he would have learned a bit from that. And obviously he went and scored against Cardiff as well. And I think was it Brentford he scored against as well. So I think he's had quite a good time since the restart. Whittaker obviously got his first goal against Birmingham, and Bird's just continued where he left off. And obviously Lee Buchanan as well has played a couple recently. So I think the restart for those youngsters have been pretty positive, to be fair, and they'll have developed a fair amount.
Yeah, I think they've really cherished the opportunity, and I think some of them have gone out there and taken it, and some of them have had to learn. I think Buchanan, I can't remember which game it was. Was it the Brentford one? where he came on and no, it weren't that one. There was one of them where he came on. It was West Brom late on,
Yeah.
and he had a nightmare minute or so, and it is difficult. But he's gone back into the team for the Birmingham game. He's looked pretty relatively sound as well, and it's difficult because some of these players are going to make mistakes because they're young, but they're going to improve from it. I think I've been really impressed with Knight, and not just his stuff on the ball and scoring goals. His stuff off the ball is brilliant. He's everywhere. The most annoying thing as a player is when you think you've shaken off a player and they just come right back. And I can just picture it now in running all over the pitch because he just has energy, and his stuff off the ball I've been really impressed with.
Yeah, I think he's been brilliant as well. I mean, to be fair, he's just sort of picked up where he left off, really, because before the restart, he was playing pretty well as well. But I think, like with Sibley and Knight in particular, they've added quite a lot of sort of tenacity to the Derby attack, and there's not too many players in there that really have that, I don't think.
Yeah, I think beforehand you probably looked at that playing squad and said Holmes is probably the only person who can beat a man with a touch or has the lower centre of gravity to be able to beat a player. And now you add Sibley, who you can beat three players at once. Just look at the Millwall goal, one of the Millwall goals, may I say.
Yeah.
Knight can do the same. We've gone from having a squad where you've only got that one ability to be able to do that to adding two youngsters who can do it with plenty more promise to come.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of thing you want, really. They're sort of just going out and just being able to play sort of the way they've been brought up to play. And I guess they're playing with no fear as well.
Yeah, they've sort of built up from performances where, and these are the sort of performances you almost want from a young player starting out. Is you want safe performances, come in, do a job, don't have to do anything out of the ordinary, like Sibley's goal against Blackburn. You don't have to go and do that. But and then someone like Knight did start like that, and then he's grown in and started adding a little bit more flair to it, a little bit more personality to his game, and that's all you can really ask. And that's where I feel, we're now going to see hopefully some of that development from Whittaker, because he come under a little bit of stick when he's come on, but it's been difficult for him. He's a young lad. He hasn't started yet, I don't believe. I think they've all been substitute appearances, if I'm not wrong.
I think he might have started one or two, but
yeah, I don't think he's started many games, but it's been difficult for him because he's had to be a little bit safe, whilst also there's been games where it's needed unlocking, and perhaps that's not the game for him. But to see him cap off the season with a goal and assist is just brilliant, because that will do him the world of good. On to the next job at hand for Phillip Cocu is the summer transfer window, if you want to call it that. Thing is, all the dates have changed. But where do you think are the areas for him to sort of clear out in the summer? Because he's definitely said that the youngsters are the last ones to go if they need to sell anyone. So where do you think are the areas for him to clear out?
Well, there's not. To be fair, I looked at the squad earlier. There's not like a large number of players that you'd say probably he'd be looking to sell. But I think players like Joseph Zoon and maybe Scott Malone, they're players that I think would probably be highlighted as ones that he would definitely be accepting offers for. I mean, those players have not really featured too much this season, and I think Joseph Zoon's been pretty disappointing for I think it was £3 million Frank Lampard paid from at the start of last season.
Yeah, I think they're probably the two that he'll probably be looking to move on, because in Malone you already have three left backs essentially. You have Forsyth, Lowe, and Malone, and he's as well as Buchanan, I suppose, if you want to put him in that section as well. So you've got three or four there, and you've got a player who is aging, and I don't know Forsyth's in his 30s now, but he still offers stuff going forward and back. He's probably still, people could probably argue me at this, but Forsyth's probably still the best left back at the club, and Lowe is still developing. So you're probably sitting there going, do you just sit there and go, well, Malone, you're probably on a decent enough wage, probably needs to get you off the books now.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just looking at the squad now. I think, to be honest, the only other player who I would probably say is worth getting rid of. Well, to be fair, I was going to say Mason Bennett, but his contract ends, doesn't it? So
does it? I've seen
about him
still having another year on.
Oh, really?
Blurry on that, yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought there was something related to him going to Millwall at the end of his loan or something.
Yeah, I
Maybe
did
that's
see
just
that.
a clause in the contract in the deal, and he's still got another year left at Derby. I'm not entirely
Yeah,
sure, but
I wouldn't be
yeah, there's
surprised.
not too many players that you'd actively want to get rid of. I don't think.
I wouldn't be surprised to see someone like Evans go if another club puts in a decent enough bid for him because
Yeah,
he's good, but he's not featured too much. He looks more like a sort of backup option in both midfield and defence. It depends how tight he wants the squad to be, essentially.
yeah.
Um, on the matter of the kids, I saw that there was in January there was obviously rumours of a bid put in for Bogle. Would you
Mm.
accept say a £10 million bid? Would you accept that or?
I think it's a tough one really because yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I think he's not really had this a season as good as he had last year. So perhaps you would maybe say, like, say if a 10 million plus bid came in, then it would be worth letting him go because obviously you can improve in multiple areas, and you could probably get a right back of like a similar level of quality to him for like a couple of £1 million that was maybe someone a bit older or maybe someone from a foreign club or whatever. So I think I wouldn't be against it, to be fair, if there was a double figure fee coming in.
Yeah, I think there's obviously Wisdom who can play right back. You've also
Mm.
got Festia Basele who looks raw, albeit, but he could possibly transition into the first team.
Yeah.
The only thing that frustrates me about Bogle, and I think it frustrates a lot of people about Bogle, is his crossing.
Oh,
We don't have
definitely. Yeah.
there's not many good crossers of the ball in the club as it is, but it's frustrating when he's able to beat a man and the cross isn't that great. So I'd want to if he is kept around, I'd want to see that improved
Mm.
quite a bit. But yeah, I'm not sure because you see someone like Nathan Ferguson go to Crystal Palace for I'm not even certain what the fee was.
Oh, he went for free, I think, because I think his contract ended.
Oh really?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, so someone like him's young and promising, and you almost want to see another season from Bogle to see how he kicks on and see how he does.
Mm.
I think that next year he is still young, but that next year could be important to whether he does become a proper, Premier League quality player, or whether you're sitting there going like you're still playing at Championship quality.
Yeah, I mean, he is a fantastic talent. I think there's just certain areas of his game, like you say, the crossing that needs to be improved if he does want to be the level that he'll be hoping to be. But I mean, I definitely wouldn't be against keeping him. But if like an offer, say like 12 million or something, was to come in, I think it would be quite hard to reject.
Yeah. Um, and on the other side of the coin, where do you think the areas are to bolster in the summer? Because it seems as though there's quite a few different areas for Cocky to look at, sort of bringing players in.
Well, I think first of all, goalkeeper. Obviously, as we've seen, both Roos and Ben Hamer have sort of been switching out of who's number one because neither of them has really done too brilliantly this season. Quite a few mistakes from both. You'd probably say maybe a winger or two would be worth bringing in, and as we mentioned earlier, a striker as well. I think would be quite a helpful signing.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one area that doesn't need touching, it's the midfield. I think that
Oh,
the midfield
certainly.
looks stacked, doesn't it? But everywhere else, you could almost argue. I'd say the fullback's relatively safe unless you're looking
Mm,
at selling Bogle. The
yeah,
fullbacks are probably okay. So then you're looking at defense. The two central defenders, a goalkeeper, a striker, arguably, and then a winger or two.
yeah. I think so. I mean, that's sent to be fair, like a centre back would be quite helpful as well because obviously Clark's inside now, but he's going back to Brighton. I'm pretty sure I've seen stuff saying that Derby are going to look to bring him back again on a permanent deal. I think he'd be a pretty strong addition, and maybe he could play alongside Tawirik, who's obviously already been brought in next season, or perhaps Christian Bielik could slot into centre back if required.
Yeah, I mean, there's options there, isn't there? It's about whether he feels because he said that he felt like midfield was Bielik's best position.
Mm.
So whether he sits there and say, "Well, I'll play you alongside Max Bird or alongside Rooney,"
Yeah.
um, I can't personally see Clark being brought back on a permanent. But I can imagine the sort of money Brighton would be asking for, and I don't think he's worth that much, but I do think they'd be asking around the 20s.
Well, I mean, I don't think Derby would be paying that. I think Derby would be looking at probably about more like maybe like 5 million or something. But I mean, he's had a great season. Like he's probably up there right now in the sort of Player of the Season award voting. But yeah, whether he's worth that or not, I'm not sure. Obviously, you got to wait and see how Tawirik performs as well, because we don't. I mean, a lot of people can say they're like excited he's coming in, but no one really knows how good he is because obviously no one's really watching much of Groningen.
It's such a tough one because we've seen it happen before where players. So we've seen it happen before. We've seen it happen once where Alvin Tozer came in.
Mm.
He looked like a really good player, and it's how you adjust to Championship football. It just didn't work for him. Simple as it's
Yeah.
it's difficult for him, but it's difficult not to get slightly excited because I've watched a bit of Tawirik, and he almost looks like Keo 2.0 without some of the
Yeah.
mistakes. Like in terms of he drives on the ball, he's really good at his passing. He looks like a leader. He was the captain of Groningen, wasn't he, last season?
Mm.
So it's difficult not to say that he could be a really good addition. It's just how he fits into Championship life, and you almost want first 5 games of the season or so. There's an absolute blinder, and you're hoping that he just doesn't have many mistakes in him at the start, so that he can sort of adjust into life quite nicely.
Yeah, exactly. And I think him coming in is quite an exciting one as well because with Derby, you rarely ever see a foreign player coming in that's not playing in English football. So to see him coming in is quite an exciting one, and maybe if he does perform, it could make Derby actually look into the foreign markets a little bit more to sign some more players. Perhaps Cocu is already going to look to do that in the summer anyway, but we'll
Yeah,
wait and see.
you'd almost hope so in terms of if he's looking to bolster the squads.
Mm.
With how I can't imagine many sides are going to have lots of money unless you're Chelsea or anyone else near the top. But
Mm.
at the moment, because of everything that's going on, you might have to be a bit smarter with some of your signings, and
Yeah.
looking outside of the UK might be the way of doing that. And I can imagine Koku's probably got links elsewhere. So it's about whether you make the right signings, and you'd like to think that actually be able to look abroad and go, actually, this player's a snip, we'll get him, and sort of things like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you look at like Brentford, they're the sort of prime example in the Championship, probably of doing that with them signing players like Ben Rama, I think Mbuemo, uh, who else they got like Norgard, quite a lot of players that they brought in from foreign clubs, and maybe that's something you'd like to see Derby do because you can get in players that are a lot cheaper, and then obviously they can turn out to potentially be sold on for a lot more, like perhaps Ben Rama is going to be this summer.
Yeah, there's almost a want for the scouts to become more international and go out and have a look at stuff because Derby tend to buy from home. It's stuff that it's players we normally see. Your Waghorns we've seen play at Ipswich and places like that, and you're normally paying a little bit extra for that. But perhaps if you know if they can look abroad and get a player that no one's really heard of. I mean, Mahrez, Leicester went and got Mahrez from I can't remember what side he came from, the
I think it
second
was
division French.
Le Havre, possibly.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, but players like that, they're not all going to work, and I don't think many signings are guaranteed to work at all.
Mm.
But it's the sort of thing where you think, well, actually, let's try something different. They've gone out and bought. No offense to them, they've been relatively decent servants to the club, but someone like Bradley Johnson, Jacob Butterfield, players like that, they've tried experienced homegrown players. Let's have a look elsewhere and see what you can do there.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably the best route to go, especially with, as you said, what's going on right now. A lot of teams aren't going to have too much money, and you can really get some good bargains abroad. So I think it's definitely worth a look.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how Cocu looks to bolster and/or clear out the squad in the summer, given that there's about 50 days now until the season starts, roughly. If my calculations aren't wrong. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does. But until we get a bit closer to that date, that's it from me and Jack for now. And yeah, we're also going to be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts from now on. So hopefully we're going to be looking to get it out onto those platforms as soon as possible. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.